So, there's this little known game called Terraria that has been pretty popular over the course of my time on the internet. Lots of people that I know have played it, and me personally, I've always enjoyed playing it a lot. And I've seen a lot of people over the course of these last few years be kind of confused on why so many people like this game and how they're supposed to approach this game because it's not great at telling people how to exactly tackle all of its mechanics and stuff. And a lot of people like to throw around the wiki game, the whole spiel, which personally to me, I don't really think so. Yes, the wiki's great, but there's literally a built-in guide in the game that tells you what to do. But I don't know. People like to say what they like to say, but me personally, I think it's one of those games where you play the game, you figure it out, and that's the appeal of it. There's plenty of games that are like that. I mean, Minecraft is one of them. Starbound is similar before they ruined it with the story. And various other sandbox games that the whole appeal is figuring out the game so that you can show stuff to your friends, and that I feel like it's not that much different than other games in the genre. I don't know why it gets so much flack when it has an actual progression compared to some other games like Minecraft. But anyways, what exactly is Terraria? Well, why don't we go to the Steam page to find out? So, according to Steam, Terraria is a open world survival crafting sandbox survival 2D multiplayer adventure pixel graphics crafting building exploration co-op open world online co-op indie action RPG which has single player elements, lots of replay value, is a platformer and is atmospheric. Um I I mean, yeah, those are definitely all things that you could definitely see appeals in the game, but I think the main ones here are it's a sandbox game. Yes, it. I mean, it's open world, but not really. Survival elements very little. I mean, we call Minecraft a survival game, but it literally has barely any survival elements in it. 2D is probably the thing that most people see the difference in. I mean, everybody loves to throw around that it's a 2D Minecraft, but yes, it is a 2D game, and in this day and age, not a lot of games are 2D anymore. But back when, Terraria came out, still lots of people are making these 2D indie flash games, stuff like that. So that's why it was such popular at the time. And of course, the adventure aspect of it and the exploration is why a lot of people come back to this game, because a lot of people love playing through these new updates, all these new things that are added to the game, and starting brand new characters to explore and check out the thousands of items that are available. And also the fact that because the progression of the game allows for a lot of fun things when it comes to multiplayer, that's why so many people love to do these bigger multiplayer servers, or just do like what I've done, which is just bring a friend or two and just do a co-op world. There's so many options to be able to have because there's certain things that you can do, and there's so many options that you have item wise and build variety, that there's always something new that you can do. And especially recently, there's so many options to be able to toggle to make things more difficult or a different kind of challenge that adds to the variety, so that you have more things to do, so you can always come back to the game, which is a good thing. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about T-Mod Loader, which obviously is a big part of why so many people like Terraria nowadays. It's just the same thing with how modded Minecraft got such a big kick, because the vanilla game obviously has so much that it can offer, so just go to the community and they can show you all kinds of cool stuff. They're always trying out new stable versions, and mods are getting added all the time. So it's always something that you can, once you think that you've mastered the base game, you can always try yourself out on all these different mods that people are creating. And some of them are pretty cool. Like, I know the Calamity mod is like a super big one if you really like the boss fights and the combat of the game, which a lot of people see as a big appeal. But there's also a lot more, cozy mods and stuff that makes the game a lot less about the combat and more about the building and the more of the slow periods of the game. So there's something for a little bit of everybody here, which is a good thing. But here we are back to the home screen, and there's something that I need to address, which is the fact of why I'm recommending this game in the first place, and why I like it. Now, I spoke a little bit about why a lot of different people like the game, but me personally, I think the best part about this game is the fact that it has so many different things that you can do. Now, I am not the artistic type, so like when it came to a lot of sandbox games, I'm not the guy who's spending a lot of time doing these elaborate builds and stuff like that. I'm more for the mundane or the engaging. I like the mining, the exploration, but I also like the combat and stuff like that. And Terraria, with its clear-cut progression, with its bosses, it allows you to actually feel like you're stepping forward in the game at all times. And even when you're doing some of the less, engaging things like just going down into a mine to look for items or stuff like that, every time you get something new, it feels like that's another step towards that progression that is just around the corner. And as you're down exploring in the beginnings of the game, you find all these things that you're like, oh wow, I don't know what this is, maybe I should come back and check this out later. Because the more gear that you get, and the more knowledge that you get of the game, you understand all these things that are laid out for you. And I think that's the biggest appeal to me, is that there's so much variety, but it's also so much fun to learn. And that's where I think sandbox games and the whole survival genre as a whole, even though I said it's not really a survival game, but I'm placing survival in the title here, because I think that entire genre is built on the fun of learning. You play the game to figure it out. And that's where a wiki is nice, because it's a compilation of everything everyone's learned. But I feel like if you don't know something, and your first reaction is to look it up, I don't think it's the wiki's fault. I think that's your fault for not... Like, if you've spent an extremely long amount of time and you don't know what to do, then it's okay. Because if you're stuck and you have to pull up like a 10-year-old GameFAQs article to try and figure out something, then it's okay. But if you're confused about a crafting recipe in a game that has a literal crafting wiki in the game, and then say game bad, I don't know what more you want. I just don't get it. But you know what? I'm just gonna leave that on the table, because this is not a elaborate video on how I'm defending Terraria's honor. That's not what this is about. This is about the game. And speaking of the game, how's the game work? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I'm also here to do. Because this video will not just be me talking and not doing anything, because I'm sure that would get old very fast. Here we are on the title screen. And, as you can see, there's multiple options, but we're just going to be doing single player because I have no friends. Also, you can drag the moon around, and if it becomes daytime, you can also drag the sun around. Isn't that neat? Anyways, you go to single player, and you got all these characters here. These are all my characters that I've used over the course of a while. As you can see, some of them have a lot more playtime than others. Hello, Peter Griffin. So, when you're creating a player for the first time, you hit new. Now, there's a variety of options here that are just completely cosmetic. You have the option between male and female. You have different hairstyles. You have the different color between your different bits. And also you have different clothing options as well. Now, when it comes to your character, I guess, core I gotta say character difficulty, whatever you want to call this thing. There's 4 different options. In all honesty, journey mode is relatively new. It's like creative mode, but not really. It doesn't give you unlimited everything. Well, it will, but it doesn't give you to it like immediately. But it basically is like a massive quality of life expansion of the original game at a easier difficulty. So that's something where if you don't want to really be forced into kind of the harder bits of the early game and just want to explore freely and do a lot of the more chill things in the game, then journey mode is your cup of tea. For me, it's not, but it's an option, which I think is great. Classic mode is what we'll be playing on for our first adventure into the game. It is the standard difficulty for all characters. And when you die, you lose money. That's what it says. Money is great. It's important. If you die, you lose your money. That's okay. Happens to the best of us. Medium core means you drop items on death. I don't play anything but classic, but medium core sounds horrible. It's like in Minecraft. You die, you lose your inventory. It's terrible. That's why everybody plays keep inventory now. But luckily, in Terraria, it is exceedingly difficult to actually make things despawn. Is it a pain to get things back? Yes, but it means that you're less likely to actually lose your items. And hardcore. It's the hardcore. You die, you dead. It's just the way it is. I know a lot of people like to play hardcore. I think it's an interesting way to play the game because you take the core risk of the game, which is, oh, I die, I have to wait 15 seconds and then I can try again, to if I die, hours and hours of progress is completely gone from existence. It means that you have to play a lot differently, but the gratification of you actually succeeding is a lot higher because people can look and see and like, oh, this guy literally is built different because if he dies, it's over. But for me, that's terrifying, so I'm not doing that. Now, I've already actually made a character already. I played them for a little bit, but I didn't really do anything. And I have a couple worlds made already. Some are old, some are new. I have 2 different things here that I will be using for our guide videos coming up. But I do want to go over World Gen because there is a lot of different options. So, first of all, the name, you can randomize it. It'll give you a bunch of random things. Some of them, the woke fold, you know, the vicinity of freedom. It's just a bunch of nonsense. But the seed is a little more interesting. If you know anything about random generation, usually how games do it is that a seed is generated, and that will dictate how the entire game is generating your world. There's actually special seeds in the game that Relogic has created to change World Gen to be either more difficult or just more weird. And I'll just put those on the screen now, but I'm not really going to explain any of those. Those are for you to go check out because I'm not worried about that right now, but it's an option. World size. Small is, well, small. It is almost too small, but if you're just not really caring about exploration that much, then this is probably the ideal thing for you. Medium is about, I believe, 1.5 times as large of a small world. This is usually what most people play. And large is about double the size of a small world. Large is good if you really want to take a long time to play the game. If you want to, span out a lot, you want to find more things, but also because things are larger and more spread out, sometimes it could be a little difficult to actually find stuff. So that's where I think that medium really comes in if you're like trying to do what I'm doing here, which is show things off. But usually I play on large worlds because I like having more stuff to do. So, journey worlds, I actually don't know what journey worlds are. I'm assuming it pairs something with journey mode to be able to have certain aspects of the world work, because it's actually interesting. I think, yeah, journey mode is different than journey, because this is the mode of the game. The character is different. I forgot. So, journey mode of the world is where all the extra stuff is added. Journey characters, I think, are just how the character functions. So I don't think you actually drop anything when you die, and you have extra equipment when you start. But so I was a little misled there. It doesn't help that they're called the exact same thing. Classic mode, it's the standard Terraria experience. It's the only difficulty that was in the game until I think 1.2. So it was just you play the game, it's the Terraria experience. This is what I will be playing on for our guide. It's not the difficulty I usually play on, but it's the one that I will 100% always recommend people to play on first, because not only is it easier, but it's also simpler, because besides making things harder, Expert and Master also change some aspects of the game that aren't in the original. So I think understanding core concepts in a easier difficulty makes things more digestible. Because when you get to Master Mode, not only is there more stuff, but also how this works is that Expert doubles enemy damage and health compared to Classic. They gain extra knockback resistance, which means they're much harder to get off of you. Enemies and bosses, or sorry, not enemies. Enemies have the same AI, but bosses have new AI, which means they get more attacks during their fights, which means compared to Classic, they could just pull something out that you've never seen before, which I think really gives to the appeal of these harder difficulties, is that there is actually brand new stuff. Speaking of new stuff, there's also new debuffs. Depending on the areas that you go to, certain enemies now have more debilitating effects once they hit you, which can range from really it doesn't matter to I can't move, which, yeah, it's not great. But also, playing on these higher difficulties give you brand new exclusive items and increase drop rates and money drops from enemies. So it's pretty torn between playing these harder difficulties, because yes, things are more difficult, especially regular enemies are more difficult because their contact damage skyrockets, especially in Master Mode. But for farming, it actually makes things a little bit easier because the drop rates are much better. So it's kind of all over the place. You also get an extra accessory slot, which I'll go into much later, but you get 5 on Classic, 6 on Expert, and 7 on Master. And the 6th slot is already unlocked in Master, and the 7th one is given to you when you defeat a certain boss in the game progression. And also defense, which is a very important stat that dictates how much damage you take, gets more effective the higher the difficulty, because things hit harder, so you need more of the defense value. The defense value is 50% on Classic, 75% on Expert, and 100% on Master, which means that Master Mode is the easiest to calculate because you just take the whole number. Now, what's the difference between Expert and Master Mode? Well, Master Mode, everything now has triple damage in HP from Classic. It's even more knockback resistant. When you die, you actually drop all of your money. On Expert, you drop 3/4 of your money, but on Master, you drop all of it. And you get new boss drops as well. You now get trophies, which I think were in the game before, but I have no idea. But there's also special pet items and stuff as well, so it's a lot more cosmetic things that just shows off that you can actually survive master mode. But also everything from expert is in master, so it's not like you're missing out if you're playing on a higher difficulty. You still get everything from the lower difficulty as well. And last but not least are the evils of the world. Random is the default option. It just tosses a coin and decides which one you get. The corruption is the classic evil experience. It's got a lot of flying dudes and everything is gross and purple. And the crimson is the more newer one, added in 1.2, which is much more gory and grotesque and is red. There's obviously way more in-depth things comparing to these two. But starting off, in all honesty, just pick which one you want more. You really don't have to do a whole lot of research because, in all honesty, the things that they affect are mostly just the boss you fight and some stuff later down the line that is really only important if you are like trying to extremely like nail down what you want to do in the late game, which I will explain way later because it's not that important. But we already have a world that I made. I have Le Guide World Purple and Le Guide World Red. And obviously this was made yesterday because this is coming out on the 12th. I'm going to be playing on the Corruption world because I think it's the default world evil and it's also my favorite. So that's what we're going to do. So when you're starting off in the world, and before we do anything, I actually want to pause because I want to go over some things in the menu that I think will be just useful to talk about now. First off is going to be the fact that you can change your cursor color. I choose mine to be white since it's just the easiest to be able to see. But it's just an option that you can use so that it's just easier to see in darker colors. Now going over to the controls, the couple main things are the fact that you can kind of quick do buffs, healing, and mana, and also grappling as well. All of these are fairly important when it comes to later in the game. Mostly grappling, because it's going to be a big movement option later in the game, and keeping that towards your WASD keys or whatever you're using for movement is going to be useful. And probably the most important besides that is the quick heal button. The reason that I chose that to be Q for me is just the fact that it's just closest to where my hand's going to be most of the time, so it's just easier to access. And depending on what you're doing with either mounts, mana, or buffing, you can move those as well, but they're not too terribly important when it comes to certain things, so I don't think it's that worrisome to use. And one more thing before we get started is I want to discuss the auto fire option in the menu. So this essentially makes it so that you have to personally click every single time that you use an item that's not an automatically auto-firing weapon, compared to if you have it on, you can just hold down the attack button and then it works like you would expect it to. Obviously the guide's right here. You can talk to him. He'll tell you a bunch of important things. He can tell you an insane amount of things depending on what your game state is, so he'll just let you know what he thinks you should be doing at the time, but you can honestly do anything. But personally, what I like to try and do is I spend the first day just hacking down trees. I spend a decent amount of time trying to get my starter area that I have leveled out so that I have enough room to be able to build a house in the first little bit of the game. I try to build at least 2 homes at the start just because I think that building houses, it's an important thing to do because of how NPCs spawn in this game. But personally, at least for me, I'm not too in-depth with that whole thing, but I just like building houses early because it gives me spots to be able to place things that I want. And it also makes it easier so if I happen to die, I can respawn wherever I need to go. Also, I'm showing here, when you go to your map, you can actually see where your spawn point is in the world, and after you update it, it'll also show up on the map. Being able to use the big map is just by pressing the M key but there's also an ability to just use tab in order to cycle through the different map states between mini-map, overlay map, and no map. Now, before I actually get to the house building itself, I plop down a crafting table, which allows me to make a variety of items. How crafting works in this game is that you have to be standing next to whatever you're trying to craft at. So whenever you get an anvil or a furnace or a crafting table, you just need to stand next to them, and then in your inventory is where you'll have your crafting menu. What you'll want is a decent amount of walls, a table, a chair, a light source, and doors. These are all things that need to be actually in the house in order for it to be considered livable. And also, I forget to make a hammer and a sword. The wooden sword's not terribly, like, super duper required. I just like making it because it's easier to deal with flying enemies. But the hammer is nice because it allows you to destroy walls, which is much, much easier if you are using Smart Cursor, which is by using the control button in order to shift between using Smart Cursor and normal cursor, because it will just target all of the walls nearby. Now, how I end up building is, what I do, I take all of my wood that I've gathered and use the block replacement tool, which just allows you to place blocks directly on top of other ones. And I just build up to as high as I can reach. There's a very loose designation on what is and isn't a house in this game. I'll put on screen what the requirements are. I just build like 20, 21 by 21 homes, and then I just go off of that. It's not like too terribly important on how you do your housing. I just do it this way. You can do it however you want, because in all honesty, like, you can do all kinds of stuff with housing. You can actually make them look nice. You could do whatever. The biggest thing when it comes to NPCs is pylons, which are, I'll explain later, but that's something that you want to keep in mind whenever you're working with NPCs. But when it comes to also placing these walls, Smart Cursor is your best friend, being able to just place in walls all around you, and it will just automatically place around where you want. So it's super duper useful whenever building, that if you're placing background walls, just use your Smart Cursor. It will save you a massive amount of time, because placing walls is extremely, extremely tedious. Then you just add your light source, and you only actually need one, as long as there is a light source, doesn't matter. Then you just take down your table and your chairs, or you can place down, as you see, I use a crafting table, which is considered a house, and then you have your little house icon over on the right where your inventory is, and that is your housing menu, which you can check to see if a house is suitable or not. Now, after we've made our lovely little home here, why don't we actually do something and go towards the left or the right? I obviously choose the left here, but usually your goal in Terraria starting out is you want to find a cave. And these caves usually take the appearance of these big little mountain-ish hill things. So obviously you can see the one here. And this chest that I get here, it has a couple items in it. I think I'll just explain the items as they come across here at the beginning, but I'll go much more in depth on how items work later on. But this first chest has a boomerang, which is a good melee weapon. It has range, which melee struggles with for quite a while in the early game. Arrows, which are used in a bow for ammunition. I don't make a bow in this first bit here, but when I discuss ranger things in the next video, I will discuss all that in due time. You have some lesser healing potions, which are probably what you're going to be using to heal for the majority of the early game until you find a mushroom biome and can upgrade them into normal healing potions. They are just better than eating just plain mushrooms and heal 50 health instead of 25, I think. Torches obviously are important. Most chests are going to have them, and there's also some wood. And luckily, with a lot of these chests, you can just use the side buttons to be able to just grab everything out of it at once. So that's always useful. Now, when it comes to actually exploring, you'll see a lot of these different pots and things. Destroying these is super important. Not only can they give you useful items like the rope that I'm using here, but also they can give you a variety of different random potions and money and all that good stuff. Also bombs. I should probably mention bombs. Now while you're moving around, you might find some ore. Now, starting off, I'd say that you probably might as well just grab all of it that's around you and don't really worry about like the specifics of it quite yet. You can check that all later. We find another boomerang, which is just funny. And there's a couple other things inside of this chest that I'll discuss as well, just because I already did it for the first chest, so why not? Glow sticks are torches that you can be held underwater and can also be thrown. Throwing knives are a type of throwable weapon. They are consumed on use and do a decent amount of damage. Grenades are another type of throwing item. They do much more damage, but they have a fuse and also can deal self-damage. Iron bars are just iron ore that's been smelted. Recall potions, which are really nice to get this early, are a way to be able to go directly back to your spawn point after you consume them. There's only a couple here, but you find so many of them that it's not really much of a worry. A Night Owl potion guarantees you a temporary buff of night vision is what it's called. It basically just makes it so that all light or all dark areas become slightly lighter. So it just makes you easier to see things. Empty bottles are used in potion making and are useful not right now, but for later. And there's also some money and some wood in here as well. And also, I swap out the boomerang that I got previously just because this one has a better modifier. I won't be talking about modifiers for a while, but this one just does more damage. There's also another chest over here. And checking inside of this one, we can see that there is a couple new items. First of all, the Wand of Sparking, which is probably the earliest magic weapon you can find in the game. It is unfortunately completely reliant on RNG to actually give you one in a chest, but it's actually really good for the start of the game. It's extremely cheap to use, deals extra fire damage to enemies, so it'll give them the on fire debuff, which deals damage over time, and it's just a really good ranged option. The Can of Worms gives you worms. It's a fishing thing. I don't do anything with fishing, but there you go, there's some worms. And just some more potions, so that's it. Now there are some minecart tracks down here that we can see. These will be very useful for traversing large portions of caves later on. And the nice thing is, all you need to do is just right click onto them. You'll attach yourself to said minecart track. And then all you need to do is be able to just, once on the minecart, you just hold down and you'll move at an accelerating speed up to a certain amount. Which as you, there's this boulder trap that just was right there. But yeah, and all you need to do is just use shift to be able to hold down on your torch while moving around. I actually totally forgot to mention this. I'm going to add this just in here, but holding shift allows you to use a smart tool option, which will pull out whatever tool is needed, whatever you're looking at. This will be your pickaxe for stone blocks, your axe for trees, and a light source if you're not looking at anything in particular. It's super useful to be able to find extra stuff. Now there was another chest that we passed on when we were riding the minecart, This one has our first accessory that we've found, which is the radar. It detects nearby enemies and will give you a amount of them on your screen. It doesn't have any modifier, so it's just what we have. And everything we've seen, except for the mining potion, which is right here. This gives you a pretty potent mining buff that lasts for a certain amount of time, and just makes you be able to mine faster. Definitely something that is nice in the early game when things take a while to break, so definitely think about grabbing some of those if you ever see them. Now, while moving around your caves, especially in the early game, it's important to make use of rope to be able to get vertically, and also just looking around, as you can see here, there's actually some tungsten, which is much better than the iron or the tin that I've found so far, and it's definitely something that you want to try and find. Compared to other ores, I'd say that silver and tungsten and gold and platinum are definitely the ones that you should mine like 100% of the time in the early game, because the gear that they can make are actually pretty useful. Now the nice thing is, just continue to keep moving is probably the best thing that you can do in Terraria. Obviously, you need to spend time to be able to mine certain things and all that, and be able to loot chests and whatnot, but the more that you move around, the less enemies are going to be spawning directly next to you. The more time that you take to sit down in one spot, the more enemies are going to spawn around your location, and makes it more difficult to continue moving. That's why I'm kind of flying through this cave, besides when I'm stopping to either show something off or to grab an item, because I'm not trying to stay in one spot. You can actually see that all of a sudden, the amount of enemies jumps from 3 to about 6. And that's ridiculously large. That's double the amount. So, as you can see, it definitely is worth it to continue moving and to just pick up anything that you can see that is probably useful, which obviously you can sort through later on. There's actually another minecart track just farther down, which is ridiculously long. I don't think I've actually ever seen a minecart track that goes this far. It goes all the way past this entire area into the jungle, which now we know is actually to the right, which is kind of nice for not now, but later. But it's ridiculous. Like, we travel through probably almost half the length of the world on this just particular minecart, and just shows how good they are to just take yourself and go all the way across, because it's not like it's hurting anything. Because if you're accelerating in a high speed, you can destroy essentially anything you come in contact with. Especially any slimes or weaker enemies will just get completely eviscerated by you. So it just makes it easier to move around. Now, on our way to the left of these minecart tracks, we actually see a ruined house, which obviously you can see the gold chest, which means that it's, a little bit more worth it than the normal chests. But also, as I'm walking around and just checking all the nooks and crannies that I can find, there's actually another one that's just barely off to the side that I wouldn't have actually seen if I wasn't just jumping around and using my torch to be able to see stuff. So that's actually super funny that I was able to find these, like, directly next to each other. That usually doesn't happen. But it just goes to show that by just using light and being able to look around, you can find a lot of stuff that you probably won't see right away. So inside of here is a magic mirror, which is basically just an infinite recall potion, which means that when using it, it'll use up, I think, 20 mana, which you will always have, so it's always useful, and will just take you right back to your spawn point for free. And it's just a get out of jail free card. If you want to get out of a dangerous situation, you can just take yourself right back to spawn. And there's also some archery potions in here. These boost range damage from bows, and obviously we don't have a bow, so they're not particularly useful, but they're there. Now, coming into this second underground house, We can see that there's just a bunch more decor items and all this other cool stuff. I just like grabbing statues and chandeliers because they look better in my houses and because, I don't know, I can if I want. I don't know. In this chest, we have a mace, which is the earliest flail type weapon that melee can get. It's super good, has a ton of damage, and can also be upgraded into a fam- f- flaming mace later on. Wow, that was not that difficult to say. There's an angel statue. It's useless. It does nothing. Good. We have some tungsten bars, which is good because our world generated with tungsten, so that means that we'll be able to actually use these fairly easily. And we also have some shurikens in here, which we've gotten a few from some pots. They're essentially pretty close to how throwing knives work. They're just a consumable weapon. I think they might do a little less damage, but they're still pretty useful. And also, right at the bottom of the screen, it says that the merchant has arrived. I'll go over the merchant later, but he's the reason why I made two houses in the first place, because you have a chance to, under certain conditions, get NPCs to move into your little homestead that you've built. And by building an extra home, you have one for the guide and then one usually for the merchant as the first person that you want to get. But his condition is that you have 50 silver coins in your inventory, and then it has to be during the daytime that he'll spawn. So it's just something to keep in mind and why I built two houses right away, just because it's a chance for the merchant to spawn early. Now, in walking around, you might see little glowing bits inside of stone. These are gemstones. Their use isn't like crazy important. They're important for mages and also for creating a grappling hook early, but it's probably worth it to just grab them anyways. I'll talk more about them in my next video when I go over all the progression stuff in the early game. But mostly, just like everything else, if you see it early, you should probably just grab it. Now, as you can see, I've got a full inventory, so I'm just going to go right back home because I can't really get anything else in my inventory. And we'll go talk to our brand new friend, the merchant. Now, going over his inventory, you have the mining hat, which gives you a bit of light around your character, pretty similar to if you were holding out a torch, but without having to hold out a torch. And it gives you a little bit of defense, and is actually part of an armor set that gives a mining bonus when wearing it, but we haven't actually found the enemy that drops this, so it's not really that important. The piggy bank is a character-specific um, uh, storage thing. So if you place it down, only you can access your stuff. So if like multiple people in your world have a piggy bank, every time you access it, it's going to be your stuff. But people can put stuff in their own piggy bank. So you only need one, and everybody can access their own thing. The anvil is made up of either iron or lead bars, and is used to make pretty much everything that's out of metal, and is extremely useful. Luckily, if you get the merchant early like I did, you can just buy one instead of having to actually use your metal bars to make one, which means you can use them for something else. The bug net is for catching bugs. I know, wild thing. It's just useful for fishing and other things that are dealt with critters. If you want one, you can buy one. If you manage to somehow lose your copper pickaxe or axe, you can actually buy another one. I've never managed to ever do this, but I guess if you do, you can buy them here. Torches, more potions. There's actually mana potions here, which we haven't seen. And this is honestly one of the only places that you can actually find them. The other is in the dungeon, which is not going to be for a while. But in all honesty, mana potions are... I'll talk about them later, but even if you're using a magic weapon right now, I would not recommend buying them. There's rope, which we can only find in pots. There's a pinwheel because it's a windy day, which just spins around. It's just an extra item. The sickle generates hay, which is a thing that you can do if you want. I know hay is used for making like damage thing dummies, like to check your DPS. If you want one of those, you can. And also the pylon. Now, the reason the pylon is here is because I have two NPCs in an area and they're both happy. That's a whole thing for another time, but essentially they're free teleportations to wherever you want to go. Obviously, it's not super useful right now because, well, my house is at spawn, and it's just going to take me right back to where I would take a magic mirror anyways, but it's definitely an option. And especially once you have NPCs in different places, it allows you to teleport to important places that you have NPCs located at if they're happy. So figuring out that whole thing is a chore, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. Now, since I'm also at the merchant, I'm going to actually sell some of my stuff. I don't need my recall potions anymore. Sunflowers are worth an obscene amount of money, but they're also nice because they give you a buff that gives you movement speed and also decreases enemy spawns, so they're just nice to have around your house. I'm also going to do a little bit of interior decorations, although I forget where my second chandelier is. But like I said, you only need one light source, so even though it's a little darker in here on the sides, it actually doesn't matter at all. So we can also place down some extra stuff as well, because now what we can do is we can make a furnace, which requires stone, torches, and wood. And place that down right next to our crafting table. And what I'll actually do is, I'm not actually going to pick that up. I'm actually going to buy the anvil, like I said I was going to, because I can save bars by doing this. And then, as you can see, just like before with the crafting table, standing next to a crafting spot allows you to make new things. I'm going to make a flaming mace, which ends up dealing a little bit more damage. The modifier is a little different, but it does more base damage and also gives you the chance to light enemies on fire, which is just free damage. When making bulk of items, like I am with these bars, just holding down right click will make them as fast as the game can. So if you're making a ton of stuff, it's probably better to just hold down. And I'm just going to sell a couple other items that I don't need. I'm going to sell my dark trap. I'm going to place a couple statues, since, I don't know, I like statues. Decorating things. And then I'll place down a couple chests so that I have something to store all my junk in, since, you know, my inventory is a little full. And what I like to do is put my money in my piggy bank, because it's a piggy bank. You put your money in it. And what you can do, in order to put stuff easier in the chest, you can hold down shift and click to put it all in, or you can just click deposit all and put literally everything in your inventory that's not in your hotbar inside of the chest as well. Also, what I'm doing for my items that I have here in my little slots on the bottom right of my inventory, I'm favoriting them, which means that I'm holding down Alt and then clicking on them, which allows me to essentially not have to worry about them leaving my inventory if I stack to nearby chests and various other things. I like to keep my recall item favorited, torches or other light sources, and my healing potions. Anything that I want to make sure is always in my inventory, I favorite so that I don't end up putting it in a chest by accident and then wondering why I don't have it in my inventory. Now, just like before, I'm just going to sell some extra stuff because I don't need it, and it gives me some money. And then I can click this wonderful button called Quick Stack to Nearby Chests, which puts everything that's in my inventory into places that it is in my storage, which means that I can put all my money into my piggy bank. Now, the guide, besides giving you helpful advice, also, if you click his crafting option, allows you to be able to essentially take anything that has the word material in its name and be able to check what it makes. This is not gated from progression. You can see literally everything that it can make in the entire game, which means that you don't have to look up anything wiki-wise. You can just see what it does and what it can make, And then as you get more items, you can kind of check and see, okay, well, I have this now. What can I make with this? And it's just super helpful. Obviously, for some things that you might not know where they are, it's a little difficult, but for anything you have obtained, you can now figure out what it's for. At least for right now, my next video is going to be about the early progression of the game and all the different places that you can go and see and get stuff. But, until next time, see you guys later, have a good one, and bye-bye.